Hello, everyone, and welcome back again to Growing Up Alien. So it's been a few days actually, since I was able to post. Nothing, unusual going on per se. We've been getting an uptick in craft sightings. A lot of folks have been getting these. Well, come to find out, they've been actually doing this for a while, it appears. So, and they're not just doing this to, entertain us. I know there's a purpose behind that. So I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But yeah, Ika's gone back to work, not for any organization, just on the base. So they've been pretty busy, and I know some folks have noticed that their contacts have not been around or on and off. They've been here and there. They've been quite busy, as I said. So what does that mean? I don't know. So he's like, I don't know. But I just recently saw another interview with Rob Khalil, typical skeptic, and Drago Reed. Again, two people you're all y'all are familiar with. So yeah, I'm hoping I just wrote to Rob and I said, it'd be awesome to have you and Drago on because Drago was talking about some stuff that lines up exactly with what I seem to be picking up as information, what I've been told and what I remember about life upstairs. So this concept that space is this exciting place where everything's wonderful and perfect and you live on the ships and everybody's having a great time is I don't know where that came from. I suspect it's a CIA thing. There's also this idea that somehow everything is there's no crime, there's no this, there's no that. That's complete nonsense. I don't know where that came from either. So you take an organization like the Galactic Federation of Worlds, which most people are familiar with, that is really just a peacekeeping force. You could just, it's like here on Earth, right? So you have police, you have military, whatever. It's supposed to be, laws and all that kind of stuff. And but we still have crime, right? So how come that's all there? How come there's wars? How come there's that? And it's like, right, derp. So the same applies upstairs. You do have like these organizations, like policing organizations that, do something, and kind of keep the negative aspects in check. But it's a multiverse. There's multi-universes and space, all of the galaxies and all that, all the story. It's huge. So it's extremely difficult. And you can't have one collective or group that dictates to other groups how to live their life. So you can't micromanage. And that's something that happens here on Earth. You have these passive aggressive type people or the micromanager type people who basically enforce their way of life, their thinking, their opinion on other people. And all those kinds of people and those kinds of organizations, and that's how Earth is run, where you have big mouths basically that are narcissistic and they take over and rule other people. Whether it's benevolent or not, you can't have a ruler that is benevolent. That's sort of like the oxymoron, as they call it, right? Because if you have somebody that rules over you, by default of them making decisions over you, they are a dictator. So it doesn't matter. So that there can never be a benevolent ruler. And this is something that they try to balance upstairs. And maybe me being a Libra, that's like you balance, right? So when we look at negative things, that is a construct. And people on Earth, Terrans, whatever you want to call them, have a problem understanding these things because they see a lot of the world in terms of like black and white, good or evil. And this comes out of their religions, even though I don't have a religion. Yeah, but you're still thinking like a religion where there's good and bad. There isn't good and bad. There simply is. Because something that's bad obviously isn't bad to someone who's doing it, right? So it's like, if someone who does something bad sees what they're doing as bad, they wouldn't do it. So someone doing something that's understood as bad to them is perfectly great. So it's all about perspective. Upstairs, you have many, you have thousands of different races and species. How can you possibly come to some kind of agreement. And people say that they do, and they don't. That's nonsense. There's no agreement as to how things should be. This is where things get complicated when it comes to Earth, because, and I just mentioned, and Drago Reed is one of the few people that actually came forward with, to me, is what I know from living upstairs myself. So if you take a planet like Era and the different races that live on Era, we don't have a government. We have councils that represent, like diplomats, the planet. We do have, okay, regulatory is the wrong word, but government, maybe like something like governing monitors, maybe, right? Monitors that if something happens, there is something done to prevent what we would consider as a whole a negative experience kind of thing, right? So if there's a fight or something like that, which happens, I mean, you know, you are not Andromedans, right? We do have issues on the planet, but we don't believe in punishment. We don't have jails, things like that, because they're worthless. We look at the entire picture and rectify what exactly was going on there. Right? So we don't have a military, we have a defense, which is a little bit different. Because if you have a military, like it could be on the offense as well as it can be colonizations and all. So we only have a defensive military, and they're off planet, and they kind of keep the peace around our solar system, around Tegeta, and they do engage at times with nefarious, with beings that would have a nefarious impact on us. So they are allowed to do that. They're not an aggressor. That's the thing. They also gun run. So the Ahel are gun runners to other planets. They're trying to that the wish to release themselves from nefarious interference. See, and that's the problem with Earth, because you have a large number of beings on this planet that don't wish to release themselves from what is considered nefarious to the population. In fact, most of the population on Earth doesn't consider their government leaders, military, this conglomerate I'm going to talk about, as nefarious. Oh, they think they vote them in, and they don't have a problem. And this is where things get complicated, because many Terrans don't feel that what's going on this planet is nefarious, and they actually are part of it. So what Drago had mentioned, because he was part of the secret space program, is what is it aligns with what I understand and what I know. And I never tell people to believe anything that I say. Ika always says, don't believe anything he says. You got to do your own work. You got to go upstairs, I won't comment really on other people's channel. This is free speech. You can talk about, there's guinea pigs and if that fly spaceships. I don't care what you put. That's you have free speech. You can write whatever you want. And I don't follow other people. I only stuff will resonate with me, but I only get my information from my own experiences and talking to other visitors. So none of us will ever tell you to believe anything we tell you. It's anybody who does that is a red flag. That's a red flag. So actually, to be a little bit more linear, because I'm not when you're used to thought transfer, you're not a linear. Because if we were doing thought transfer, I would have downloaded this entire thing to you right now, and oh, okay. Pictures and everything. So like I said, I'm hoping to get Rob to bring Drago on the show. That would be really fantastic, because I think it would be a really cool conversation to say. Anyway, so Earth is owned and run by a massive interstellar trade corporate conglomerate that rules and works through much of this galactic realm. Okay. So the removal of some of the more militaristic aspects of this group has been done. So they were basically, the fire was put out. What is left behind now is that massive interstellar conglomerate, which is nothing but a trade organization. Upstairs, we don't deal in money. because you really couldn't. And you have thousands of species from all those different star systems. There's no way. I mean, if you look about on Earth, right? If you fly to Germany, right, you can't use American dollars. You got to change your money. So this is would be impossible upstairs to do something like that. So how we deal with goods and trade and commerce is just with that, with trading goods for goods. So I have a basket of chestnuts and you have grapes and we trade. Okay, so we have a conversation and it's complicated. It isn't like when people think of that trading shells for a rock kind of thing, it's not like that. But it is like that, right? You're trading goods for goods, like for like. And ultimately, money is the same thing. It's just more abstract. And of course, we know it's not real. But well, people are going to find that, anyway, we'll see where that goes. But so Terrans, and this is the complication here. So trading is what is done, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's not illegal. Now, there are certain things that some races, this is the key point, there are certain things that some races will not trade in. So the Ahel do not trade in body parts. We do not trade in meat. Other races do. Is what it is. So you do have some races and sometimes entire planets of people, of beings, not just people, other beings, that think trading in slaves and meat is not okay. These are the people that are working to help the earth. You have other races and species that do trade in meat. They're not vegan. They trade in meat. They trade in slaves. And that's cool. They don't have a problem with that, right? This is where we are. So you'll have different people, because no planet, no race, like you should say the hell, that is not a hive mind. Everyone is different. There are certain people like Ika and obviously like you guys that are here, the envoys, right? There are certain of those amongst us that feel we need to do something because they're suffering. It almost reminds me of the animal. I've been an animal rights activist most of my life. Obviously, because being a hell, we don't do things to beings. So it's kind of like that here. I just finally today came up with I think this analogy would probably work. So there are people on Earth that believe in that non-humans should have rights and they shouldn't be subjected to laboratory testing. They shouldn't be subjected to slaughter. They shouldn't be subjected to violence upon their body by another species, humans, right? So that's a way of thinking. The Ahel, the Venusians, the Tau Ceti, some of them, but anyway, there are many races upstairs that also would be the equivalent of an animal rights activist. So they feel that what is being done, trading in Terrans, is not okay. But just like animal rights on Earth, this view is complicated because there are many who don't have a problem with trading and selling the flesh or the bodies of other beings. This is what you're dealing with on the galactic realm. So whether something's right or wrong is relative. It is considered illegal, basically, to trade in not just humanoid, but sort of, I don't know what to call it, species that are advanced, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, technically advanced, whatever, right? That is generally, it is frowned upon. It is not done. It is illegal, basically. You have pirates in space. So the pirate groups are different. There's pirate traders, right? It's kind of like a black market. That's in space. Maybe both think the Keely Tolkert, those kinds of people, right? So there's they've not been doing that per se as much, but they're just traders, right? Just like you go to the grocery store and there's bananas and cucumbers and apples on one side, and there's body parts in the freezer section, right? Of different animals. No one seems to be really concerned with that, right? That's allowed here on this planet. So there are many races and species that don't have a problem with selling body parts, is what it is, right? So on Earth, this is a resource planet. It's a resource planet because the beings on the planet are perfectly fine with being inventory. No one is really, there's a few of us resisting, but most are not. All of your star races deal in trading goods. The Terran is a commodity, like cucumbers, like toasters, like sports cars. So you don't see really anyone, running around trying to liberate toasters from your local Walmart, right? That is a traded good, a toaster. Nothing wrong with that. Same thing. A Terran is a traded good by a very powerful intergalactic trade organization, corporation. So here's your, right? It's like, so you'll hear people say, oh, the Terran DNA is magic. Terrans are these magic beings. Everyone wants the DNA from the Terrans. We're the royalty of the universe. Yeah, that's true. Yep. Yep. That's true. Just the same way everyone wants a certain fancy brand of shoes, or some people want a certain kind of sports car, right? Terrans are an object. They're a very high shelf object to be purchased. So yes, it's true. Terran bodies and Terran DNA are they have a high price upstairs, let's just say, right? It's the diamond ring. Not because they're magic, not because they're considered, ooh, it's because they want it. It's a high priced car. You can buy yourself a 5-year-old Toyota, or you can buy yourself a brand new BMW. So the Terran is a brand new BMW. That's your deal. So there are individuals that want to see that stopped, but there's a lot more who don't see a problem with this. And here is where we stand. The secret space program, I call it Space Force, Space Force, whatever you want to call it. I call it Space Force. All right. The wealth of this planet is deeply woven with the trade that leaves this planet. Now, it's not all Terrans that leave this planet in a basket to be hawked. There's other things that are traded from this planet. But you have a delicate economic structure that not only benefits those that rule this planet, and that's your Space Force, that's your SSP, that's all these guys. That's why they don't want you to know they exist. And as you know, James Rink was silenced a few days ago. I think it was last week or something. He's recovering now. He's doing better. They gave him a warning. So yeah, what you're dealing with is so those of us who want to liberate Terra and want to liberate the Terrans, you're basically considered the galactic extremist animal rights activists, right? That's what we are. Extremist animal rights activists. And that's the way you're going to be treated. It's economics. It runs go as Louise always says, it's all about the gold. It is. Not just on this planet, but on other planets. It's all about the gold. It's all about trade, because it's all about survival. And yeah, you hear a lot of weird stories about that. Oh, the Andromedans and something. The Andromedans are kind of away. When you get into things like the Arcturians, the Andromedans, they've kind of, what they remind me of? Here's This is like you go back in the day. We're going old school. Um, During the time of the porcelain trade, let's just say, so China, throughout much of history here on Earth, China was self-sufficient, right? It had everything it wanted. There's a few things it would pull in, but man, it was cool. However, what China had, everybody else wanted. So Earth is like China back in the day, the porcelain trade, let's say, and the tea. Remember that as well, and how the British wanted the tea, so they um, created that triangle trade with the opium, and they wanted to get the in order to get what they wanted cheap from the Chinese thing in Hong Kong and all those stories, you know that, right? With the tea and the opium, and anyway. So that's actually what we're dealing with right now. This is a good way to another good way to explain the situation. It's all about that. It's all about the gold. It's all about the stuff. There's stuff here that people want, that beings want. In this case, not only people, humanoids, beings. And this is where you run into difficulties when you hear people talking or channeling or whatever, Pleiadians. No, there's no such thing as we don't call it the Pleiades, but you got all y'all here on Earth, the Pleiades, right? That is a big area, and there's a lot of planets there. So some of the people who live on the Pleiades don't think anything of Terrans. You are a cucumber or a toaster to them. Nothing. You're nothing. Not everyone, of course, in those different Pleiadian races feel that way. There are some who think that, they're the animal rights activists, like, yeah, it doesn't feel right. So you can't go by, none of these people are hive minds. There are some Pleiadians that have become virtually synthetic. That's a whole different, I'm not gonna talk about them, that's a different thing. We're leaning towards that here where the Terran may be synthetic. It's going to be completely a resource at that point. It may very well happen, just like happened to the Grays. I don't know. Who knows? So you have Pleiadians that see Terrans as nothing but toasters. They have no interest whatsoever. This is similar to a farmer that raises a pig and walks out there and shoots it in the head. They don't see the pig as anything but a resource. That is the only way I can give you an analogy here, right? This is hunting season here. It's the fall in Massachusetts. They're shooting deer. They're going to be shooting, they shoot the birds. They don't care. It's food. They don't care. That is the way Terrans are viewed by many, many galactic creatures, beings, humans, whatever. Okay. We have a mindset that complicates this situation. Because you have those ETs that are the animal rights people that want the Terrans to be liberated. And then you have other ETs that are like, well, why are you trying to liberate, a cucumber? Why are you trying to liberate, objects that we purchase, that you guys don't make any sense. So you have that fight going on, right? You got the animal rights people that are like, no, these are beings. They have feelings. They feel pain. They think, the story about, oh. And then you got the other side that's like, oh, I like bacon, right? That's your argument. It's all about perspective. That is the argument we're facing here. So what's the answer? I don't know, because the Terrans themselves are not doing anything to release themselves from being inventory. They're doing nothing. So just like the cows, that's basically what you got, right? You go out west, you got a herd of cows. They released there's a bull in there and the cows, and they're all hanky panky to make more cows. And then usually the male cows are then sold to meat trade. That's what's happening on this planet. You got a bunch of Terrans all thrown together. They hanky panky, right? They make more Terrans. Great. No clue. Right? They have no idea what they're doing. Yeah, your livestock, your chattel. And people just are not picking. Now, the problem for us as envoys, we came in, we're the animal rights people. We came in here, right? And we disguised ourselves as cows. So now we're seen as cows. We're like, no, we're not cows. We're like, yeah, you're a cow. So a lot of the space races and beings upstairs now see us as cows. We're part of the inventory. And we're screaming back going, no, Hey, I'm an Andromedan. Hey, I'm an Arcturian. Hey, I'm a mantis. Like, hey. They're like, yeah, moo, right? So we're all one big screw pot. Uh, Hopefully, we'll be able to, of course, we have our family and we have those different ET races and species that are on our side, helping us to try to fix this. So we'll see where that goes. So there are individuals that wish to see it stopped, and there are individuals who don't see a problem with it. So it's not considered right or wrong. It's considered a gray area. So you have people who tell you that trading in beings is illegal. Um, and there are people who tell you there's nothing wrong with this. And for those individuals who think that, there's some kind of magical humanoid thing that, it's illegal and people are magic and you can't sell them. And like, okay, well, you do you. Because remember, Frank Chile was even told by an NSA worker. He says, Frank, you know what we call people? Inventory. Yeah. Terrans are the catch of the day. They're slaves. They're the lab animals. They're mercenaries. No rules, just right. So yeah, whatever you want to do with a Terran, you can do. And I remember Corey Good, and he was right when he said on a ship, it was Solar Warden, I think. I'm not sure. Can be correct. It was the secret space program. There's not a dime's worth of difference between secret space program and Solar Warden and Space Force. But on this ship, they were walking, and he was with another woman or something. There was something. They saw a freezer full of parts. Parts is parts. Those were going to be traded. That's food for a lot of ETs. They eat people. He saw it. And the woman actually was killed and he was reprimanded, I think it's like, so your secret space program was not only they protect, this is what, yeah, Space Force and all that, they protect the planet, they protect their interests. They also are merchant ships selling a bunch of different stuff off this planet, including the Terrans. The secret space program not only is a mercenary protector for this planet and the resources that are owned by this planet. So they had a lot of tentacles. You had the Nazis. You all remember that? That's still there. The Nazi group, the Nachtwaffen, right? The Dark Fleet, the reptilians were the Draco were part of this. You had Greys that were part of this. A lot of that was removed. Why? Because it was a problem for other star systems. So this is why during the time of the nuclear crap, all of the ETs came in. They came in because nuclear weapons create a ripple, a rift, a problem, because like as a scalar effect off planet, and it bothers everyone. It's actually really dangerous. So that's why they didn't give a shit about the Terrans. They came in here. Not that they all didn't. There's some that do care. Like I said, it's an individual thing. The reason they came in here and the reason they see people think, oh, they're watching, they're protecting us, they love us so much. Oh, they don't want us to have nuclear war. They don't want us to have nuclear war, not because they don't give a fuck about you. They care about what it's the repercussions. That's why they're stopping that. Okay. It's complicated. So this interstellar corporation that owns Earth, the deep state, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to say they're well received upstairs, but they're legit. I guess that's kind of the best way. So the trade that they do, the deep state itself is generally not condemned. And it's still seen as a business. It's seen as a group that is doing its business, and we don't want to stick our noses necessarily in this business. And again, it's the same way that animals are used on Earth, the same way Terrans view animals, right? It's business. Same way cows are smashed in the head, the same way rats are tortured in labs. It's business. And there are some Terrans that feel the deliberate injury to other sentient beings is wrong. There are other Terrans that don't have a problem with that. So philosophy not only exists on this planet, it exists upstairs. These beings are not, are they smart? Yeah, well, whatever. They're whatever we want. They are also run by philosophy. The hell have a philosophy. I don't see a lot of difference between, this is just me, it's my opinion. I don't see a much difference between philosophy and religion. They're both the same in my book. If you have a code of thinking that you share with a bunch of others, that's a cult, that's a philosophy. So the Ahel have a religion, they have a philosophy, just like the Andromedans have a philosophy. I think the Andromedans are we don't believe they're like the pacifists, right? They're non-violent. They don't get involved. That's their philosophy. The Ahel are generally we are also pacifists, but we will get involved military. We are not non-violent in that case. We are not aggressors, but we are what we could call defenders. That's not something the Andromedans would even do. They're in the Arcturians. They don't defend militarily. They don't fight. The Ahel fight. We have military. My husband is in it, right? We have military. We will fight for what we consider is right. So we're the militant animal rights activists. Let's call that. um, every group has their own philosophy, their own way of doing things. See, so that's where we're, like, oh, there's these little kids that are being eaten, and they say, oh, that's trade. There are little cows that are being eaten. There are chickens are slaughtered while they're still peeping. There are babies being killed all the time. That's just a philosophy. If you're part of the group, see, that's the thing, right? There's groups that feel eating little baby things is wrong, and there are groups that don't have a problem with that. So you're going to headbutt. And there are third groups that just stay out of the argument. The Andromedans don't eat meat, but they just stay back there going, yeah, whatever. You guys, fight it out. It is what it is. And this is where we are. I say the biggest hurdle here is that the Terrans don't have a problem with being inventory, just like the cows. Just like the cows out on the pasture out west don't have a problem with being inventory. The Terrans don't have a problem with being inventory. And until that's what we're here. We're trying to wake them up and say, do you consciously want to be inventory, or do you want to be something else? That's our fight. So the visitors are arguing in the same exact way as the meat eaters versus the non-meat eaters. So some people think that, like I said, smashing sheep in the head or poisoning beagles is not right. Other people don't have a problem with that. They're doing it. Obviously, they don't have a problem with it. There are people in labs that have no problem poisoning and torturing animals. They don't have a problem poisoning and torturing great apes. So there are obviously people and beings that don't have a problem with that. When you go upstairs, you got the same thing. They don't have a concept of that. No concept whatsoever. There are entire races, and I'm not preaching to the choir here, that have no problem with that. So you, the Terrans, not and unfortunately us in the same boat here, are a resource. It is how trade, it is how, it is how the world is run. It's how the galaxy is run. It is trade. Earth, like other planets, so Earth is basically a farm where commodities are grown for export. That is simply it. That is all it is. You are the commodity. So, um, pick a side, basically, right? That's basically, however you want that to play out. We'll see how that plays out. We're all doing our thing. We're all playing our role, is what it is, like I said. So all these ships that are going around, that's part B. I'm actually back to, I just didn't, I know for some reason it was just kind of, Eco has been working hard. He got tired and I get tired because he was tired. I think we share sometimes that, and is what, right, So anyway, today I've got, part B. The visitors are spamming us with ships. Why is that? So there has to be a reason. It's not because they're bored. These are photos from, this is Nashville, Tennessee, 1989. Oops, I want that there. This ship here is a Pleiadian craft, and these were taken. There's a whole video of Frank Chile explaining all this, but it was 1989, right? Back in the 80s, they were Pleiadians' favorite music time. These craft, this is one craft. Is actually, it looks like there's many craft in the photo series, but there's only one. And when they power up and change the polarity and play around with the power system in the ship, well, the ship doesn't, right? Obviously, the ships are conscious. So they were putting on a show for Commander Bethune, this guy he knew, a friend of his, to take pictures. And there's a book, and the book's quite expensive now if you can find a copy of it. But there are copies of this text. And this guy was compelled to meet outside of Nashville, and there was a craft right there. And that was for him, it was they weren't there for any other thing. It wasn't an ego trip or anything. They wanted him to take pictures of the ship. As part of the disclosure, just like Billy Meyer with Semjase, poor Semjase, and other ETs that sacrifice their mental well-being to interact with Terrans to further disclosure. So this guy, they put on a big light show for him. And he took the pictures, and there's a book out there. You can buy the book. So this is the craft putting on a little show, and there's a lot of smoke around that. So those clouds are a reaction of the atmosphere with the ionosphere that actually the ship creates. So you have clouds that will form around the craft, and they'll use it for cloaking actually, so they can control the condensation, right, of the atmosphere around them and cloak in a cloud. They can do that. They can also use reflection. So there's like a quantum reflection. It's kind of like if you had a glass house. There's pictures of that, right? If you had a mirror or a glass house, that would be quantum reflection. It just reflects what's out around there. So if his ship is in quantum reflection and it's still and it's overhead, it'll cast a shadow. So there you go. So here is this. This is that is the Pleiadian ship putting on a show for a reason. This is the same exact ship. And you can see the cloud formation, the condensation, the clouds as the ship is emitting an energy. That is a different power that it is chosen. The people inside have chosen for the ship to do this, to show off, so the guy could take a bunch of pictures. So this is the same exact ship using different power up, and you get that. It could be flashing lights. It can be all kinds of stuff like whatever they're trying to do to play with you. So when they're doing this is for a reason. You're supposed to take a picture of it and you're supposed to share it. That's right. It isn't there because they think you're awesome when they're giving you an ego trip, right? So this is the key now, right? Why are we being shown all of these crafts? There's a purpose. This is my cell phone. And I did a close-up of one of these objects that we've been getting spammed with every night when it's not cloudy. So Patrick and I are being a little bit more deliberate on what they're doing and can we interact with them. We knew before. I never took pictures before because my camera sucked, and I'm not into being part of this like UFO photo scene. But now they're like, you need to get another camera, and I did. It was expensive. They don't help me with anything like that. You have to pull it out of your own wallet. So I got a better camera that now takes pictures. And we had my friend Michelle over, so there was 3 of us one night, and they put on a big show. I told them before we went out, I said, can you guys put on a big show for us? And they did. So this is interesting. Another thing Patrick and I noticed is that wherever we are in the yard, they fly over that part. So they change the way they fly. This is interesting. I'm like, okay, this is cool. So I did a test the other night. So usually we sit on our porch because it's, we're away from any wildlife that runs around and eats the apples in the orchard. We don't want to be like there is some a lot of critters, bears and everything come by. So we usually sit on the porch and they'll fly over the porch. Well, the other night we were out in the driveway. And that's all the noise you hear is traffic. It's not a huge, I don't not live on a major road, but it's a main road for all these small towns. It's the main road into Berlin. So the traffic here is insane. We have super country roads like in Bolton. There's a road called 117 in Bolton. That thing is a highway. It's a tiny road. It's a two-lane road, and it is the main thoroughfare between Bolton, this stupid 495 crap highway, Leominster, and all the so the traffic on that country road is insane. Blow your mind with the sound of traffic. So we have the same problem. So while we moved from the porch to the driveway, they moved. The craft moved. I'm like, holy crap. So last night I moved back to the porch, and lo and behold, the craft also moved and flew over my house, as opposed to over the driveway. This is we're like, oh, wait, okay. So they're doing stuff. Okay. The question is why? Why do they want these pictures out there? So that is a picture of a close-up of one of these little buggers on my cell phone. There it is. There's my cell phone. There's proof right there. It is on my phone. That's my new phone that they made me buy. Bastards. There's a call-up. So when you photograph these things, get up, with zoom and play around with all that. So you can see it. You can see, I call it, you can see the craft. Do not zoom it initially. Show it in situ and then zoom and show people what it looks like up close and then zoom back out so they can see it in situ again, right? So, like, okay, what am I trying? I'm not here to prove anything. You guys, y'all too, it's up to you if you want to. If people want to analyze my footage and get it, that's it. That is, the ball is in their court. They are free to pull this off the internet and do whatever they want. Bring it to the laboratories and shove it up their ass or whatever they want. I don't care. I'm not here to prove anything. I don't give a fuck. You know me. I no longer give. So here's one up close. I've seen this, and what's nice is when you zoom in on some of these, you'll start to recognize a certain craft. I've seen this craft a few times. So they've been spamming me with that one. Here's another one. This is actually one craft. So there's two flashy parts. Now, is this military? It could be. I'm not sure. It strikes me as it may have been, because this is one that flies lower. So interesting. Here's another one up close. I think this one was a flasher. I'm not sure. It's not Will. So there's one there. That's a different ship. That looks similar to the other one. That was like that weird octagon shape. Reminds me of like a cube or some sort. Then there's, slide this forward. Let's see. Oops. There we go. So you can see this is a zoom and how you can see the warp and the color changes and everything. See how it's flashing different colors? Remember that ship that I had showed initially, the one the Pleiadians had that had all the different colors on there? So what they're doing here, I suspect, is on purpose because they want to put on a show. So the warps will obviously, as they power up, there's going to be color changes on the craft itself. But I think they're doing this to show off, which means they want you to videotape these things. So get outside at night, and you don't have to worry about it because they'll know when you're there. They know. They know when you're there. So they come out for us clockwork between, well, at darkness. So now in New England, it's dark at around 6:30 or so. We haven't changed the clocks yet. So it'd be, Patrick and I noticed they'll put on a show between 6:30 or once it gets dark and 8 or 7:30. And if we stay out there past that, there's no more show. They don't come around anymore. So that's interesting. Every single night, if I step outside right at the dark, there's a ship right overhead. within 5 minutes of me standing there. So you can control when they come. Now, you don't have to meditate. You don't have to stand on one leg. If that floats your boat, if you want to meditate and stand on one leg and do some kind of program, go ahead, do your thing. I don't do shit. I don't think you have to. There's a lot. I don't understand Terrans and why they have to overcomplicate things. Um, just say, I'm coming out. Like I will tell them, like when we're filming and I want to go, check on the chickens and close their light and get them ready for bed. That's usually around 7. I'll tell them, I'm like, I'm going to the chickens to close the lights now. So they know. There was one night, we had a date meeting with Dave Rossi, and they were doing their little show, and Patrick was there. And I told him, I said, guys, I gotta, hey, hi, nice to see you, but I gotta go in. I have a meeting. And it flashed, flash, 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 flash. Like, bye. It said goodbye. So play with them. Like I said, you don't have to do any kind of magical rituals to do this. If they're not over your area, they're not over everywhere, obviously. So, see if they will. Ask them to come over your area, that you want to be a part of this, whatever they're doing here, whatever this show is all about. Tell them, right? So here's a flash. Here's one. You can see it. This is a zoom in. It's hard to steady the cameras, by the way. I was a pain in the butt. I've tried, I've braced, I've done, because you can't use a tripod. Yeah. So cool beans. We'll pop out of here. If you try to use a tripod, you can't, because you got to move the camera because they're moving. So I ain't going on around. The other night it was a pain in the butt because we had several. Patrick was spotting while I was trying to get in. He was like, there's three of them. And they're all like doing their thing. And I'm like, oh, it's really hard to get the stupid cell phone camera. When you do it to get, you're like, it's a nightmare. So when they do a group, it's hard to get all of that. Couldn't get it. So I just focused on one. But for sure, get out there and videotape. I've been telling everybody, I'm like, oh, it finally dawned on Stupido here. They're like, what the hell's going on? Because all y'all getting spam, craft spam. And it's like, what are they doing? They're like, oh, derp. They want us to film this stuff. So I told everybody, I said, get out there, get all your footage, film the shit, right? Put it on your social media, spam your social media. I think what they're trying to do is wake up all the nitwits. And there are some Terrans who are like, oh, it's just a moving star. Because stars randomly just move like that. Yeah. You're going to get a complete, I don't know, what good, hey, they do that. Let them do them. You don't know. Yeah, anyway. Yeah. But I think that's what they want. They want us to get all this crap, spam your social media with it, so you'll reach more people, and I guess try to wake up the livestock so that we can do something here with this planet. So I know the 3-eye atlas folks are all excited about this week. I guess there's something magical is supposed to happen. So we'll see. What's today? Today's the 28th. Supposed to be some magic days, so I'm all for that. Hopefully something wild and magical happens at the end of this week. But if it doesn't, well, there you go. Surprise, right? Yeah. All right, guys, get out there, get your footage, and as always, we'll see you upstairs.